Hello friends, this is Growl. In this video, I'm going to show you exactly how to find a mythic raiding guild, along with the prep beforehand and tips for passing your trial once you get there. With the changes to loot in Shadowlands, anyone who wants to stay competitive with their gear knows they need to attempt some mythic raiding, even if just a few bosses. Let's be honest, if you clicked on this video, you know why you need to find a guild and get started raiding, so let's just jump right into it. First is the prep before you start looking for guilds. This is the part most people make the biggest mistakes on and why they get stuck without a raiding guild for so long. If you're just starting off, your first goals will be to clear normal and then to clear heroic for the ahead of the curve achievement. It may look tempting to find a guild right away to help with these, however, joining guilds that are progressing on normal or heroic will stunt your growth significantly. In World of Warcraft, it's very uncommon for an entire guild to progress quickly. For example, a guild that was the 100th guild to clear the raid will almost never clear it 10th or 15th in the next tier. Good guilds will slowly grow and improve over time, but if you're just starting off and your goal is mythic raiding, you don't want to be waiting 6 raid tiers for your heroic raid guild to improve and get to cutting edge. What will often happen if you're serious and driven is you'll end up guild hopping. First, you'll join a casual guild that takes anybody, then a couple weeks later, leave and find a guild that does heroic, then leave a month down the road and find a guild that can do the first couple bosses on mythic, and so on. This isn't great practice. You don't want to be guild hopping if you don't have to be. So what's the solution? Pug as far as you can. You can use Group Finder to pug all of normal and heroic by yourself or with a few buddies. This can be a bit frustrating and time consuming, but you won't regret it when the first real guild you join is already progressing on mythic bosses. My first raid tier in World of Warcraft was Uldir, and I pugged AOTC on week 2. It took nearly 10 hours and over 100 pulls to kill the last boss, Gahun, but it was worth it in the end. It allowed me to move up the ladder quickly and get cutting edge in my first raid tier. The biggest tip for pugging I can give you is spend a lot of time looking through everyone in these raids. Look for people who have already cleared the raid playing on their alts or helping their friends. Don't just stick around in a group where the entire raid has never even seen the boss that you're trying to kill, and the leader is just blindly inviting anybody with a pulse. Do your part too. I'm not saying just expect to get carried. Read up on all the bosses and their mechanics. Take it very seriously if you don't want to waste too much time in these stages. So now you've pugged as high as you can, it's time to introduce you to Warcraft logs. If you're not familiar with logs, players can use in-game tools to record raid fights and post them to this website. Your overall DPS and HPS will be ranked with all other people on the site. Your logs are not the most important part of passing your trial, however, they are your foot in the door. Most guilds will not consider you if you don't have at least reasonable logs for the content you've done. This means it's time to get back into pugging heroic to practice. Go back to some of the bosses that you scored poorly on and figure out what went wrong and how to do better. This process may take several kills and can be a bit frustrating in pugs. Once you find a real guild, you're going to slam all these logs anyway, but that isn't the point. You just want to demonstrate that you're comfortable playing your class and understand how to put out high damage or healing in a wide variety of scenarios. I will revisit the topic of logs and improvement at the end of the video, but this is an important primer. Finally, you want to get your raid UI set up. You can do this while you're working on your logs as well. Record yourself play and tweak things until everything is just right. UI is very personal, but there are 3 major things that are important to consider when making a good UI. Number 1 is that the vision of your character is clear. You never want anything obscuring your character at any time when you need to dodge mechanics, so move anything out of the way there. Number 2 is you also need clear vision on upcoming boss abilities. This can be done using a variety of add-ons or weak auras. The most important thing is that you know what's coming before it happens. Number 3 is clear visibility on your key rotational abilities as well. You need to be able to see the cooldowns on important abilities easily. I know some people can play with classic WoW UI and all their icons at the bottom of the screen, but I certainly can't. My eyes don't work like that, and I need something a bit higher up. Alright, so your UI is set up, you've pugged as far as you can, and you've cleaned up your logs a bit so you can at least pretend like you know what you're doing. Time to start looking for guilds. The first and most obvious place to find guilds are the friends and people you met along the way. If you're networking or just friendly in these raid pugs or whatever Mythic Plus or PvP you're doing, there's a chance you run into somebody in a guild who does need people. This is the best option, as having someone who can vouch for you will make it much more likely you can get an invite to a guild that fits, and pass your trial once you're there. World of Warcraft is a social game, and building those relationships with people will help you a lot. If you weren't lucky enough to get a quick in on a guild, the next place you should look is your class Discord. Over the course of improving your gameplay, you probably ended up in a Discord dedicated to your spec or class by now. These Discords always have recruiting channels where guilds can post messages if they're looking for players. This is a great place to look for two reasons. Number one, you know they need your class since they're in the Discord and you can directly just click on the guy's name to message them. And number two, you know they need that class ASAP. They went out of their way to join a class Discord and post a recruitment message. This means your chance of getting a trial and passing it goes up. The next place we look is WoW Progress. This is probably the most common method, however, I suggested the other two first since I think your chance of success is much higher with them, so you should exhaust those options before you go to WoW Prog. Once you're here, you can use the filters to find guilds that suit you. If you're willing to server transfer, this is the best option since you have a much wider variety to search from. I'm currently on US Horde Kill Jaden, so you can see these are the options available to me right now. It's a smaller population server, however there are still plenty of guilds to choose from. If you happen to be on a smaller pop server, don't panic. Although your options are smaller, your chances of getting a trial are also higher as their options for players are just as small as yours. The little R next to the name shows that the guild has a recruitment post on their page, but you can still search through or find people from any guild. Let's go down the list a bit since we're just starting off. Here's a guild that's 6 of 12 mythic. This might be a long shot for a newer player, but who knows, if you own then maybe you have a shot. This is a good time to talk about finding the right guild too. Ideally you want to find a guild that fits you well and then stick with them for a good while. You can get a good vibe of the guild just from their recruitment message. These guys seem pretty serious. 3 days for 3 hours each. Missed days subject to removal from the team. Recruiting up to 35 players and each raider is required to have 2 characters? Wow, these guys are more hardcore than my guild. This is a bit too serious for me. Let's see what else we can find. This other guild is only 3 of 12. However, they're only raiding 6 hours a week, which is a bit more laid back. A group of friends from Legion that wanted to try and start raiding, slowly progressing and killing some mythic bosses. The requirements are only that you keep up with your chores, and you can make most raids to notify the squad when you can't show up. Not recruiting for bench, all spots are for core positions. I'd love to see this since I'm not joining a guild to get sat on bosses. This seems like a much better fit for the first guild for a new player. It's important to look at the recruitment classes, raid times, and overall feel for the guild before you apply. If you expect to be put into a raid, then you have to be reliable and show up to every raid all the time. It helps if the guild is recruiting for your class as well, although it doesn't hurt to message a guild that you think is a good fit, even if they aren't looking for your specific class. If WoW Progress lets you down, or if you're waiting for a trial, trade chat is always an option. It sounds desperate, and I'll be honest, it kind of is, but you never know what could happen. Let's say a guild's healer calls in sick last minute, and the whole guild is just sitting there short a player with nobody to ask, then your name pops up in trade chat as a healer looking for a mythic raiding guild. They might just be like, yeah, screw it, just grab them. You can even let them know that you'll bounce if their main healer gets back, because a short raid is still better than no raid. I actually found my first mythic raiding guild through trade chat, and I ended up killing 7 of the 8 mythic bosses in my first raid tier with them. Okay, so you got some trials lined up, now we have to pass them. If you were aggressive and smart with your guild searching, hopefully you found a guild that's a couple bosses ahead of where you are currently. This means that we have to make a good impression. First things first, get your excuse ready for not having logs. This was the biggest wall for me as a new player. People have been playing WoW for many years and tend to gatekeep a bit. If you shoot too high with the guilds you contact, you're gonna get laughed at when you say you don't have the logs of past mythic raiding. It doesn't mean don't try, I'm just warning you ahead of time. Usually the way the conversations would go is they would ask for logs and I would say that I just started raiding. I've gone from X to Y and here's what I have to show for it so far. I have past experience with other competitive games like Brood War or Dota 2, so I'm not a total noob. Then they usually say they want somebody with more raiding experience. To which I say, do you really want somebody who's been hard stuck as an average raider for years, instead of somebody who's going to own and be one of the best players on your roster in a few months? Then I usually get removed from friends, but hey, at least I tried. Alright, so after some messages, we finally found some suckers to give you a trial. How do you pass it to get into the guild? First things first, do your homework. While Progress has a place to upload kill videos, and you can also check people's streams in the guild or even just the guild Discord for kill videos. This lets you see what strategies they use for bosses so that you come prepared. The absolute best situation is if during the trial one of the officers asks you if you know the strategy for the boss, you immediately get to say, yeah, I was watching your guys' kill video yesterday, am I with the left team or the right team? You'll immediately stand out from other trials and show that you're willing to put in work to speed up the raid ahead of time. The obvious tips apply here as well. First of all, don't die. Don't worry about getting some super high parse or owning, just don't die. Hanging with them and doing average is completely fine and almost a guaranteed pass actually. Dying is one of the only ways you can stand out as somebody who doesn't know what's going on. If you end up dying or making a mistake, don't be frustrated about it and just admit that you made the mistake. Blaming the game, luck, or even worse, one of the other raid members is a quick way to get declined. It really helps to make some friends and connections in the guild as well. Raid teams are big and it's easy to find things that you have in common with people. Here's a few people from my guild Discord, specifically the officers. This J-Funk guy's Discord picture is Kramer from Seinfeld. Last year, I had work done on my internet and it went out. I binge watched every Seinfeld episode back to back because I don't know what to do with my life without the internet. That's a great opportunity to message him a joke or even bring up the story or just talk about Seinfeld with him. Soj is the admin of the Discord, and his name is an obvious Diablo 2 reference. His Discord picture is also an Arctic Monkeys album cover, so if you're into that kind of music and play Diablo 2, you can immediately build a connection with the person who's literally the most important in the guild. Anime avatars are really popular as well. If you ever see somebody with one of those from an anime that you watched, you guys can be weeb buddies right out of the gate. If you see the guild spamming Twitch chat emotes after linking Disney clips, maybe that's a sign that you should probably get out while you still can. That's it, you did it. If you did everything that I said, you actually own and you're probably now in a Mythic Raiding Guild. Before I end the video though, I do want to talk a bit about WoW Analyzer and Warcraft logs. Once you find a guild, you still want to be continuously improving, whether that's to eventually find a better guild down the line or just to improve as a group if you like your current guild but are hoping for a bit better progress. WoW Analyzer is a great tool for learning about the efficiency mistakes you're making in raids and how to improve them. Here's an example of WoW Analyzer. This was a fight that I played quite poorly, because I played it poorly on purpose just to show you guys in the video, right? Okay, so let's look at what we do here. So I put in the log for the video, I selected my character, and now we get a big checklist of tips. And, since I did all these mistakes on purpose, just to show you guys all the mistakes, I would never make all these mistakes, but, So here we have stay active through the fight. You get to see your downtime. I have 50% non-healing time, whether that's doing DPS or 30% of the time just doing nothing, running around in animal forms or tapped out watching YouTube. Here we can see I'm using my wild growth effectively and it likes that. My healing cooldowns, however, it looks like I didn't use Flourish a single time in the fight, and I only used Trank once at the very end. Also, it looks like I could have gotten more use out of my Innervate and Incarn, so you can see a big mistake here is not getting good use out of your cooldowns. Here, my F-Flow and Life Bloom, these are spells that you want to have up nearly the whole fight. You can see my F-Flow was up a large majority, but my Life Bloom not so much. Here we have tips for mana management as well. You can see what mana I saved with Innervate and if I'm overusing Regrowth, if I'm using my procs, and what my mana at the end of the fight was. Here it shows my defensive spell breakdown. Did I get value from Ironbark? Was I using it? Would I use it? Was I using Barkskin? Here it's showing my enchants, foods, flask, and potion. You can see I didn't pre-potion at all, and I didn't even have a food buff. Let's skip down that before my raid leader sees that. Then it gives you some more condensed tips. Here we can see the big cooldown mistakes. I could have used 2 Tranquilities, 2 Tree of Lives, and Innervates, and more Flourishes. This is a large portion of my HPS, so if I was wondering what happened in this fight, it's mainly my bad cooldown usage. Then you can see other tips. It looks like my mana was a little bit sloppy because of Innervate and clear casting, but on a short fight during a re-clear, this is to be expected. Overall, I think WoW Analyzer is a great way to learn about mistakes, especially if you're not sure about what's going wrong in your raid fights. That wraps up how to find a guild in World of Warcraft, from all the prep work to passing your trial and improving as a player. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to give it a like and subscribe to my channel. Don't forget, I stream on Twitch, and I'll be streaming all of our guild's Castle Nathria progress and making mythic raid healing guides for all the bosses along the way. Happy raiding!